Hey world, welcome back to another video. It is me, Abby Abadoo, with Sid, and today we're finally going through the Pets at Home rat guide. As you know, if you've stuck around since the guinea pig Pets at Home guide, you'll know this is something that has been on my to-do list for ages, and these videos take a long time to plan. So I'm just going to do a brief recap for those of you who haven't seen the guinea pig Pets at Home guide, which I'll link in the cards and in the description. So Pets at Home is a pet shop in the UK, those of you who don't know, and a lot of their stuff is very controversial. And I've also heard quite a few bad things about their leaflets. Without any more waiting or talking about nonsense, let's get onto it. The first page, as always, just as the guinea pig one, is an introduction to caring for rats. It talks about how rats are better suited for adults and older children, which I'm really glad they've mentioned because rats aren't easy to take care of. Rats can be very complicated at times, and there's lots of factors that I'll get into soon about why rats aren't going to be good pets for young children. Also, by straight away mentioning that they're not good for young children just makes parents not want to buy them. Now, the reasoning behind why Pets at Home thinks that rats are not good pets for children is that they're noisy and active after dark, which is kind of true. However, if they were going to add this in, they could have mentioned that rats aren't nocturnal because that makes them seem like they're nocturnal. They're actually crepuscular, and I hope I've said that right because I always say it wrong. This means they're active at dawn and dusk. So for me, they're awake from about 2 or 3 in the morning, go to bed at around 7, and then wake up again at 6 o'clock, hence them being awake right now. And they'll be up on and off during the night. Now, I don't have a wheel in their cage. They get an hour outside of the cage just to free roam my bedroom, so I'd rather not take up the space in their cage with a wheel. They can be a little bit noisy. They dig, they chew, they forage, and if you have a wheel in your cage, they'll probably rattle that as well. But as someone who's owned gerbils, they are nowhere near as loud as them. You'd think something so small would make less noise, but that's not the case. They mention that rats enjoy company, which I'm so glad they did, and that they should be kept in same-sex pairs or groups. Now, I had the same issue with the guinea pig one, but I seriously think that considering this is the first page, they sort of just right off the bat spoken about how much more important it is to keep them with another rat. They can so quickly become depressed and even just pass away because of depression if they're left alone. Some people say that when their rat's cage mate dies and they were left with a single, the rat didn't even last more than a week. It is so important to house them with preferably a group. I've got 3. There's a very rare case where your rat will be aggressive to all rats. And if they are, then that's something you should really think about and discuss with a vet, whether it's okay to leave your rat as a single and what sort of things you could do to make their life more interesting and easier and less lonely. It also says they live 2 to 3 years. Now, many people believe that rats only live 1 to 1.5 years, unfortunately, and it's completely possible for them to live to 3 years old, but they don't live long, unfortunately. Their lifespans are very, very short. I do feel like I get the point where Pets at Home added this in because it makes them seem like a longer commitment because their lifespan is short, and if parents want just a short-term pet for their child to keep them entertained, which is not why you should buy a pet for your child, but if that's what they're thinking, then they're going to think, great, only 1.5 years, 1 year, that's great, that's all we need. But you're going to need a rolling group. Unfortunately, one is going to pass before the others, and then you're going to need one in replacement of that so your rat doesn't get lonely. This next section here, Home Sweet Home, is double page spread with some cute rats in the middle, and it rightfully states that rats are very active and need constant brain stimulation. It says that they get bored easily, that they need lots of ropes, hammocks, climbing toys, deep bedding. And it also rightfully states that you need to have a day and night cycle with your lights or where you have them in your house. So if you kept them in a dark, dingy room, then they won't know when to wake up and go to sleep again. But like my bedroom, I've got windows, I've got LEDs, there's a day and night cycle. But there are some things that they could improve on. They did mention that their cage need lots of levels. My cage has levels, but I took them out because rats really need an active layout. Now, I know what you're thinking, well, how are they going to get around? They climb everything, which is why you need so many ropes, IKEA tie holders, hammocks. As they get older and less active, that's the time when you want to add in your levels, which your cage will always come with. No matter what cage you buy for them, it will always have levels, and I will always say, take them out until they get old. Now, I really like that they said don't have a cage with wire bottom flooring, which is like 90% of cages out there. Like the Critter Nation, a very popular cage, and no one talks about the fact that you need to take that wire bottom out. And they also said that it can cause foot problems. So they're expanding on the knowledge that you need to own rats, which is great. But they never said it's called bumblefoot. They could have added a bit of a diagram in to say this is what it looks like, guys. They did say that if your cage has wire bars, then they will climb on them. Completely true, rats do climb, but they really should have said don't use a tank, don't use anything with just glass walls. They say that you should clean your rat's cage once a week with boiling water or pet-safe cleaning products, and that you should keep a small amount of their unsoiled bedding to keep their scent in the cage. They also said to try and use a litter tray to make cleaning easier, which is what I do. Rats are very easily litter trained and it does help. Now, I would say cleaning their cage once a week is not necessary. I do a full deep clean once a month. Obviously I spot clean bits of it. Their litter tray gets rid of almost all their pee and poo. And I also don't think it really matters what time of day you clean their cage. Obviously don't purposefully go out and grab your rat while they're asleep, but if you take the hammock, let's say, that they're sleeping in, and put that in a carrier, 9 times out of 10 they're just gonna fall asleep again. So rats do really just wake up when you're around them as well, because they know it's their owner. They also made it seem really important that you don't use cotton nesting material. They said you should try and use dust-free hay or tissue. I'm a little confused why they never mentioned what sort of bedding to use for the whole cage and not just nesting material, which I use hemp, and there's also snowflake shavings, that's another thing you can use. Now they've gone back to talking about how to house your rats with other rats. So the same thing, housing them together in same-sex pairs or groups, preferably from the same litter so they're already friends. But they still don't make it seem necessary. But if they just said, you cannot have a lone rat, ever, then maybe that could change parents' minds, again, buying them for their children because they don't realise how many rats you actually need. They never spoke about how difficult it is to bond rats with other rats, and then they just said, house them separately if they don't get along. That's so vague. They could have said, you really need to try and push their friendship to get them back together again. If nothing works, then sure, house them separately. They never said you will need to adopt other rats and see how your rats get along with them. There's something that some rescues will do where you kind of rent a rat. That sounds really mean saying it like that, but that's essentially what it is. And you go to the rescue, you take your rat, and you try and bond it with them. If it works there, then you can bring them home and carry on the bonding process. If all else fails, then you can take the new rat back. It sounds really mean, but honestly, this is a very good idea because you're not paying money for a rat that might not ever get along with your current rats, and then you're going to be in the same issue. There is another lovely double-page spread about diets. It mentions that they aren't fussy eaters and that they even enjoy a bit of human food, which is right, they do like a bit of boiled egg. They said ration treats. They said to feed them with a bowl. This isn't wrong, it's not abuse if you do it. I mean, I'm not going to judge you if you do, but I would completely recommend just scatter feeding. It's so much more enriching. Even using foraging toys. I've used foraging toys before, but my rats sort of just figured them out and then it wasn't really doing anything for them. They were kind of bored. So I just scatter feed, bury some food in some places, hide food around the cage. Just like the guinea pig one, they recommended using their own brand of food, and just like the guinea pig one, I'm still standing by my opinion that they're never going to change this part of the leaflet. They're a business, they got to advertise it. That's fair enough. But it would be more acceptable if their food was actually good. But if it were me, I just recommend finding someone on Etsy that makes their own mix. or making your own mix based on the Shunamite diet. And you can use nuggets. Some people argue they're not as enriching. Some people argue that they're better because your rats can't pick and choose what they want. I use the science selective ones, but I am planning to swap them to something else, preferably to make my own food. But you can use pellets just as long as they're the right ones. The only thing I wish they would add in is that they should have mentioned that fruit or too many vegetables can really upset their stomach. Rats have very sensitive tummies, and you're gonna have a bit of a poop explosion if you're not careful with what you feed them. I think it's good that they spoke about how rats drink more than other rodents. I have a bowl and a water bottle just to give the option between two. They only spoke about water bottles and checking the nozzle daily. Fair enough, that's completely fine, but I wish they said you can also give them a water bowl, and they should have the option of both. This page here, called Making Friends, initially makes it seem like they're talking about your rats having cage mates, and as I was reading this I was thinking, finally, they're speaking about how to bond rats together. But it's actually about your bond with them, which is obviously important, but I'm still disappointed they're not going to talk about how to bond rats together and how complicated it is. I love the mention of new home sniffles. I was so stressed when my rats came home with porphyrin around their nose, sneezing constantly. This did actually lead to Nellie having a little tiny respiratory infection just the start of it, but I had no idea new home sniffles were a thing. It's a bit odd that it's in that section and not the health section, but who am I to judge? It says it can take a long time to bond with your rat, and that you need to take it steady and slow, and it kind of gives you some advice on how to do that. I have had a really good experience with my rats. It's the second they came home, Mabel and Nellie were all over me. But for the most part, all my rats are really friendly, especially Mabel. She will just climb on my shoulder and sit there. But I do think it's really important that they mention this, because they're just putting that chance out there that they're not going to want to be touched. They said not to lift them by their tail, which should be obvious, but clearly there are some idiots in the world who still think that you can do this to a rat. No, you can't. It really hurts. Their tail skin is so thin that it could just rip, and also it can cause spine issues. This here is the page about a rat's health. They start speaking about their coat. It's good. That's the first sign your rat is becoming ill, is if it's spiky, dull, not smooth, feels quite wiry. I'm not really sure how to explain the texture, but it just doesn't feel smooth. They say check their eyes and nose regularly. I do this every day when I see them. It's very easy, just look at your rat. This is really good. They do talk about porphyrin and the red substance that comes out their eyes and nose, but they really should have just said it straight away and not later on in the leaflet. It says to keep an eye on them when they're out the cage, because they can chew things. It says you can try clicker training and trick training. True. So I'm liking this page because it has more true information than the rest of it. I'm glad they mentioned when you take them out the cage, because this is implying that rats also need free roam time. They don't outrightly say this, but I'm pretty sure anyone with a brain and willing to research rats will find this out. I used to use a pen, which is what Pets at Home recommend, but my rats are just too smart, like most rats, and any which way I try to use this pen, making it taller, making it wider, putting stuff in, putting my arms across the pen to stop them from jumping out. No matter what I did, they found a way out of it. The only thing I think could have been spoken about more is wheels in a rat cage. And before you all attack me, if you're sensitive about this topic of rat wheels, skip ahead. Leave. I don't want to listen to you screaming at me. Rats need a very big wheel because you need to accommodate for their tail and their body length. It needs to be about 12 to 16 inches. 12 inches when they're babies, 16 inches when they're bigger, but obviously it's easier to spend the money on the 16-inch wheel in the beginning. These wheels are very expensive, very rare to find. There is a company called Tic Tac Wheels. I've never bought from them before, but I've heard people like Emiology talk about how good it is. It's pretty 50-50 whether your rats are going to use the wheel or not. Boys are said to use it less than females because boys are less active, but I've heard countless amounts of people say their boys use it more than their females ever did. And then I hear people say their females use it religiously, and then some people say that their females don't use it at all. So rats will pick and choose whether they use this, and it's up to you whether you want to spend the £60 on a 16-inch wheel or more. But if you have a cage like me, which is the minimum size, you should not go any smaller than this, and this is only okay for 3 rats. If you have a cage like that, then I would just say don't use a wheel. Your rats will much prefer having the floor space, the dig box, the different climbing items, than having a massive wheel that they might not even want to use take up all of that space. You can just let them free roam. That will accommodate for the wheel being there. If you can have a wheel, great, I would go for it. But if you don't, then maybe you can save up in the future. It's not a necessity. I like the mention of dental care, making sure their teeth don't overgrow. There's no mention of what colour they should be. They should never be white. They should always be like a orangey yellow colour. And they could have added a picture in of that, saying this is what rats' teeth should look like. I hate the mention of a mineral block. Why would you ever need this? It's essentially a salt lick. No animal needs this, okay? They aren't yummy. They do not do anything good for your animals. If your animals have too many of these minerals, it can actually make them sick. Imagine being handed a block of salt and being told you gotta lick this until it's gone and then you'll be healthy. Just stay well away from them. I don't like how Pets at Home has mentioned this. I like the mention that rats aren't hardy animals and that they do get ill very easily. It's so common to have respiratory infections. So far this year I've already had 3, and tumours are really common, ovarian cysts are really common, and unfortunately these little guys who don't live very long go through a lot of medical issues in their life, which is why it's so important to get these things right. They do talk about the porphyrin around their face a little bit more in this section, but never link it to respiratory infections, which is one of the most common ways you would ever see porphyrin, other than your rat waking up in the morning and maybe having a little bit around their eyes. They just say it's linked to stress, which I've never really experienced it with stress before. I guess that is true, obviously, but so much more common to see it with a respiratory infection. Now, these next few bits make rats seem like awful, scary creatures. They say don't wake up a sleeping rat or else they'll bite you. 9 times out of 10 they won't bite you, they'll just maybe jolt upwards, look at you for a second and be like, oh, it's you. Can I go back to sleep now? It's different if you went into their hammock, grabbed one of them and started dragging them out of it. Yeah, they might bite you, but rats don't usually bite unless they're ill, incredibly scared, like terrified to the point where they have no resort and don't know what to do. If you stick your hand gently into a hammock, your rat will most likely just recognise your scent anyway and know it's you. Another little random thing they add in is they talk about probiotics when you bring your rat home. Not necessary. I've never done this. No one on the internet has ever mentioned a thing about this. To be honest, I haven't even heard about using probiotics when your rat first comes home, ever. This is the first time I'm hearing about it in a Pets at Home leaflet, and you don't need that. One, if you use it too much, you can make your rat's body not respond to them, so if your rat ever does actually need probiotics, then it might not work. It says to relieve stress and aid in digestion. All animals will be stressed when they get home. All animals might not eat much. A good diet and offering them food and just giving them a quiet place to sit for the first few weeks of their home goes a much longer way than giving them medicine and force feeding them medicine that they probably don't even need. It makes them sound like dirty, evil monsters. They talk about diseases and that you can catch diseases off of domesticated rats. It's technically possible, yes, about this much of a chance of catching a disease off of your domesticated rat, but pet rats from good breeders or rescues are usually not a health risk. They make it sound like you'll get sick just by touching them. Domesticated rats are not exposed to things like sewers or drains, and they should never be. Those are the places where they pick up diseases. Your domesticated rat then lives in your warm house in a nice lovely cage, safe and away from dirty streets. Isn't going to catch anything. As pregnant women and children under 5 years old should stay away from them and wash their hands frequently when touching them. I'm immunosuppressed. I have no immune system. It's been completely nerfed by all the medication I'm on, and I don't need to wash my hands when I touch them. but they're not dirty. They're not going to give you a disease, and this is the issue with owning rats and why people are so against it. People immediately link the word rats to the plague, to diseases, to dirtiness, when they are the sweetest and cleanest animals. Fun fact, rats clean themselves daily more than a cat would. They clean themselves more than a cat, but we're quite happy letting cats into our home. We're more than happy to pet a stray cat on the street that we have God knows where it's been. But a little rat that's just climbing the bars innocently in my bedroom, people are scared of them. The only good part in this section just says clean their cage accessories frequently and make sure that you don't use your everyday fairy liquid washing up equipment. I know they would never say this because, again, they're advertising their store, they want to make their company seem great, but I would just never buy from a pet shop. These poor animals are bred in awful conditions. These rodent mills are just full of disease and illness. In fact, Pets at Home and lots of pet shops across the UK are planning to stop selling guinea pigs because of an illness that is going around in their rodent mills. There isn't even a thought about the rats' good genes in this. Considering they have such a short lifespan, you'd think you want to make them the best they can be. It has the 5 welfare needs and a checklist, which I'm going to go through now. A large rat cage, rat house for each rat in the cage for sleeping. Yeah, you could do one for each. I've got a multi-chamber hammock here, so there's 3 sections for 3 rats. Then I have my Sputnik up there. All 3 rats, just rat stack in that. Suitable paper bedding, example, paper-based. I wouldn't really recommend paper-based because it just will stink really quickly and you'd have to actually replace it once a week. Hammocks, good. Ceramic food bowl, kind of going back to my argument earlier that they don't really need to be fed with a food bowl. You can if you want to. A large water bottle, good. Pets at Home rat nuggets. We're not even going to talk about that. Healthy rat treats, good. Rat-sized toys, good. I like how they emphasize rat-sized. Like I'm going to give them a massive dog bone. A bottle brush. I'm really impressed that they keep talking about bottle brushes. I know that seems really lame, but I said this in the guinea pig one as well. I would have never thought about that. Gnawing toys, great. They need to chew. Pet safe disinfectant. I would just use baby wipes. That's what I use. I use baby wipes and 50/50 water and vinegar solution. Rodent playpen, again, you can if you want to, but they'll probably escape, so just make a CNC barrier around your beds or around your desk where you don't want your rats to go. Tray for digging and safe suitable digging material for use outside the cage. Yeah, you can, outside the cage, it's great, but I put it inside the cage as well. I use cocoa fibre. I've made 2 videos on their cocoa fibre. 2 of my most popular videos, by the way. You guys are really enjoying the muddy rats content. Time every day for your new friend, good. A book on rats, don't really need one if you're willing to do actual research and hopefully not buy this. And a local vet to register rats with, great, because that's implying that they're gonna need vet care and that's gonna be expensive. So is it helpful? Nah, not really. I couldn't say I'd recommend this leaflet to a child that's looking into rats. There's sprinkles of good information here and there, but then you get the piles of bad information. Rats are such complicated animals, and you would not know that unless you started seriously digging deep into research and owning them. I do love them, I will always recommend them, but only if you're ready to own them and willing to do everything you possibly can for your rats. I think people are better off just researching themselves. I think Pets at Home need to start making better leaflets with better information. Pets at Home should hook themselves up with some rat influencers. Call me up. Okay, even though I'm a small pet channel, I'll give you all the advice you want, Pets at Home. Go ahead, call me. Don't call me, I probably won't pick up the phone actually. Phone calls scare me. They should seriously start talking to pet influencers and asking them actually what it's like to own these rats. Or even talking to breeders. They say they paired up with the RSPCA, but the RSPCA is actually quite good on their information. So yeah, in conclusion, don't buy either of these Pets at Home leaflets or any of them for that matter. Just research yourself. That's my rant over, and hopefully I will see you all in the next video. I know these videos are super long and I ramble quite a bit, but thanks for sticking around and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!